Welcome to the real world. My name is Cameron, joined by
That's
Carson,
right.
and we are here to talk all things Superman because Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, is now in theaters. Got to check it out, check out our reaction on that. But now we're going to talk about the entire history of Superman in television and film. We're going to talk about our favorite Superman actors. We're going to rank them at the end of this episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Real World Podcast, episode 113 of the Real World Podcast.
That's
Really
right.
excited to dive into all things Superman. We got our new Superman shirts on. Carson picked these up at the store. I'm
Yes.
ecstatic. I've got the new Superman
That's
logo.
right. The David Corn
I
Sweat,
mean,
James
this
Gunn's
is
Superman.
great. You got Superboy.
Yep.
Um, so cool. So we're ecstatic to talk about Superman. As always, he's my favorite superhero. He's come up a
He's
number of times on the podcast.
yeah, he's a very interesting character, I think,
Yeah.
because so many people hate Superman.
Yeah.
So many
Yeah.
people think of him as a boring
Right.
character because he's so powerful.
It's true. It's true.
So today we just wanted to go through the history of the
Yeah.
character
Hmm.
and talk about why we love Superman and
Yes.
why we think Superman's important.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, it's going to be a fun discussion. So we're going to kick things off where it all started. Before we get into the movies and shows, obviously Superman comic books came first. Superman 1938
That's right.
debuted in Action Comics #1, created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, and changed the game. I mean, he's really the first superhero of his kind.
Sure.
And so,
He's got the cape, he's got the spandex, he's
that's
got the
right.
logo on his
That's
chest.
right. Inspired by, circus performers and Greek myths and all these
Of
different
course.
things that they kind of combine to create this character.
Yeah,
It
what's
really
so
changed
interesting
things.
about Superman's inception and his earlier
Mm,
appearances is that he really wasn't as powerful, I think, as a lot of people imagine him to be today
it's
from
true.
from the original comics.
Right.
He dealt more with interpersonal problems.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
dealt
yeah.
with
Street
wife
level.
beaters
Yeah.
and he
Right.
dealt with,
It's true.
like, yeah,
This is the
little
Depression era.
local
Yeah.
issues. Yeah, it was Depression era,
Right.
and I think a lot of people often go to All-Star Superman as kind of that
Mm,
golden example of what a classic comic Superman is like.
sure,
And I think
sure.
it's a pretty good example because he's back to that interpersonal roots of the
Right.
character. And
Superman
that's
for all seasons also, I would say, is another
definitely,
big one.
yeah.
Jeff Loeb
Yeah,
wrote it.
very good.
So yeah, definitely interesting comic book history. So many different iterations of the character, and like you saying, he developed in so many different ways over the years.
Definitely.
Changed a lot.
Yeah, but those roots of him being a small town interpersonal character
Yes, yes.
who cares about people,
Hmm.
like you were saying in the Depression era,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
trying to deal with
All kinds of social issues
exactly,
and different things like
exactly.
that. Hmm.
Yes.
So just a few years later, we get the first iteration of him on screen, which is the Max Fleischer animated cartoons.
Yeah, this
Um,
this is a terrific series.
this is such a good series of
It
shorts.
holds up even today.
It really
Really.
does.
I
It really
mean,
does.
it's
I think
really
it's
really
great.
phenomenal. Nearly 100 years old,
I know. I know.
and it is incredible
Yeah.
how it was the most expensive animated series in history at that
Oh,
point.
really? Oh, wow.
It
I didn't know
was.
that.
A lot of people point to Bruce Timm as creating Batman the Animated Series, being
Mm.
like a Batman's version of the Max Fleischer
Yeah,
cartoons.
right, right.
And that wasn't really his intention, but
Sure.
there's a lot of similarities
Oh,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Because I think what they're both trying to do is create this retro-futuristic
Mm.
world
Yep.
of
Timeless. Yeah,
Metropolis
yeah.
that is timeless,
Yeah.
even in the 1930s
Sure.
when it was
Right,
released. It
right.
was still kind of very
Futuristic,
Art
yeah,
Deco,
yeah,
very
yeah.
yeah. Had its own distinct style.
Right, right.
And again, the animation of the Max Fleischer cartoon
Great.
is phenomenal.
They're on Blu-ray right now. Actually, the box set of the motion picture anthology with all the Christopher Reeve films and Superman Returns
That's right.
includes all the shorts. But you can also get them as a standalone release. It was just released a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So check those out if you haven't had a chance. I'm a huge fan of those. They're tons of fun. They, kind of changed certain things about the character, made him a little stronger, made him able to,
Leap tall buildings
leap
in a
tall
single
buildings in a
bound.
single bound.
Yeah.
We did all that stuff. And their depiction of Lois, their depiction of Lex became very definitive moving forward. So
Yeah, Max Fleischer's cartoon, I think even more so than his debut comic,
yeah.
really solidified a lot of
Mm.
the fundamentals of
Hmm.
Superman.
Yep.
It's the classic mantra, of
Yeah.
he's here to fight for truth, justice, in the
Yeah.
American way.
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's
It's a
Superman.
bird, it's a plane, it's
Faster
Superman.
than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive. All that comes
Up, up,
from
and away.
this. Yeah, all that comes from
Yeah,
this
yeah.
animated series.
And it really, to me, is the perfect beginning point
Yeah.
for what is Superman?
Hmm.
Where does he come from? What does he
Right.
do? Is this Max Fleischer cartoon?
Yeah. I agree. And the 40s also had the first live action iteration, which was a series of serials
Sure.
showed in theaters starring Kirk Alyn. So he would be the first actor to play Superman in live action. Unfortunately, I've only seen clips of those. I haven't actually watched the entire thing. I'd love to, but they're a little bit difficult to find. So we'll move right along into the 1950s when
Yeah, we
Superman jumps to television.
right. We have a really cool visual aid here with us. We
Yeah.
have a magazine
Yeah, this is an Entertainment
from
Weekly issue.
2014, I
Yeah, I
think.
think so. The 75th anniversary.
Pretty incredible.
So it's got a timeline here. We're just kind of going through, and there's certain things that we'll have to add in because they don't have every single thing
Sure.
in. But
Yeah, this was released in promotion for Henry Cavill's Man
yeah,
of
yeah, right
Steel.
before Man of Steel came in,
So
exactly. So
yeah, pretty exciting.
so now we're moving into to George Reeves,
Right.
The Adventures of Superman. Now this really skyrocketed his popularity
Right.
among the zeitgeist. I mean, this is where he was on lunch boxes. He was, everywhere. I mean, you couldn't
Right.
escape
In the
Superman.
same way the 60s Batmania took over
Yeah,
with
Adam
Batman.
West,
This
right.
was the
Mhm.
Superman equivalent, I think, to that.
Exactly. Started off as a black and white series, again starring George Reeves. Great cast, great characters. They did such a great job bringing him to life and making him very likable.
Right.
Making him, just bringing all those elements to the character that we know and love from the comics.
Of course.
He really embodied the character, I think, very fittingly, and did a great job both as Clark, as a really he's not necessarily the bumbling Clark.
Sure.
He's very
He's in the know.
stalwart. Yeah,
And he's always he knows he's Superman. He
Yeah.
knows no one else knows, and he's kind of
winking at the audience
leaning
a
into
lot.
that,
Yeah.
winking into it.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, the audience, that was kind of the fun thing. Is like, we know. No one else knows.
Right.
He knows we know.
It's our secret with Clark.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It was great. So fun
And that
series.
version of the character, this is the secret identity issue.
Yeah.
Is Superman who he is?
Yeah.
Or Superman what he can do?
Right.
Is Clark
right.
Kent
Mhm.
who he really is?
Yeah.
Who is Clark Kent?
Right.
Is he the disguise?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of different interpretations. I think this specifically, he is Superman. First and foremost,
yeah,
that's who he truly is. And
Right.
Clark Kent is very much a
A
disguise.
disguise. Sure.
And that rings true for All-Star Superman.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And for a lot of
basically any iteration moving forward.
a lot of his most popular
Yeah.
iterations, it is Clark Kent is a total disguise,
Right.
not really what he's like.
Mhm.
Superman is the real person.
Yeah. So
How do you stand on that issue?
I like it. I like it. We'll discuss it more moving forward. I think, there's other ways to look at it. I think, when it comes to the character, it's fun to have this kind of version where it's, he is kind of putting on a disguise as Clark. He's not really
Sure.
being himself.
Right.
I think George Reeves balanced that pretty well, though, with again not going too far with the bumbling nature of Clark, and
Sure.
he's really trying to not be Superman.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? He's not going that far. He's not putting on this big show for everyone.
Sure.
It's more just he's kind of sticking in the background. He's doing his job. That's his kind of thing.
Right.
And then he becomes Superman, and he kind of saves the day. He
Sure.
becomes Superman when he needs to.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's kind of that kind of vibe. But great show. I think it's very well worth watching. I can't wait to finish it. It later became a color.
Right.
So it started in black and white, became color
Sure.
later on. But
And I know
great show.
this isn't technically in the 50s, but it takes place in the 50s. I
Oh.
thought we should mention Justice League: The New Frontier.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can bring
So
that up
I just
now.
thought it
Sure,
would be
why not?
kind of interesting to mention it here because The New Frontier is a more modern comic that is taking place in the 50s.
Right.
It's all about the Cold War era.
Mhm.
It's all about, the Vietnam War and the Korean War.
Yes.
And all the stuff going on
Right.
politically in the
Yes.
1950s.
Right.
And using the character of Superman as a political tool.
Right.
And I think that became more prevalent the more popular the character became.
Sure.
He became a paragon for American politics and straightforward, straight-laced. They call him the Big Blue Boy Scout.
Sure.
So those are all, I think, traits that kind of came in around the same time.
Yeah, and they did, and they were played heavily and played more satirically and stuff like The Dark Knight Returns,
Of
where
course.
Batman fights Superman.
Right. And Superman is
Um,
in representative of the US government
correct,
in that comic
correct.
specifically.
Yes, exactly. Which has been corrupted at this point.
Right,
It's,
right.
it's a really interesting
Kind
take.
of kind of more of a Captain America
Almost,
story.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. So great stuff. Yeah, New Frontier is definitely worth reading and watching. The film is a great adaptation, the 2007 animated film.
Certainly.
So let's jump from the 50s and that super popular, character into the 60s. So 60s is an interesting time. There's not a ton of big stuff going on with the character. He
But
starts
in
to
the comics,
slightly lose popularity
right.
after the show ends, but
And
there's a great
Batmania took over.
Batmania takes over.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So while Batmania is happening,
Mhm.
we get all of the weird Superman comics.
Oh yeah, yeah. The 60s were a strange time.
This is the dawn of Bizarro, the
Right.
dawn of
Yes.
all of the bizarre like Mixie at Spitlick.
The dawn of comic book writers, maybe smoking things they shouldn't do
It
because it got wacky.
got very
It
bizarre.
goes
Yeah.
really sci-fi.
Mhm.
It goes really fantastical.
Yeah, aliens and space adventures
Yes,
and
other dimensions.
magical
Yeah,
creatures.
right. It was fun. It was fun stuff.
Things certainly got very colorful for sure.
And the 60s also got into the animation again
Right?
with a group of shorts. I'm actually going to pull them out because I forgot to pull them out. They're down here.
Okay.
A group of shorts. Oh no, I must have pulled them out because they're not down there. Where are they? Oh, here they are. The Filmation Adventures. So these are from the 60s.
This
is
isn't
really fun.
This isn't exactly Super Friends.
No, it's before Super Friends.
This is the precursor.
It's before Super Friends.
Right.
This is probably the most unknown DC project ever. I feel like no one knows about this.
It's very
that
possible.
it even exists.
Yeah.
It's really fun. They're really fun shorts. Certain ones just star the Atom.
Right.
Some just have the Flash, some just have Green Lantern, some just have a Hawkman.
And they're basically, if I'm not mistaken, comic excerpts that are voiced over.
Kind of.
But
they're
lightly
animated. Yeah,
yeah.
they're animated.
Right.
They're fully animated things. But yeah, they're definitely taking a lot from the comics. But then certain ones feature the Justice League, which is all these characters together. No Batman, no Wonder Woman.
Right.
But you've got Superman with, Aquaman, Hawkman, Flash, Green Lantern, the Atom.
I just thought I should mention because that team, the
Yeah.
Atom, Flash, Superman, Green Lantern, is the same Justice League team from the failed Justice League TV pilot from, I believe, the 90s.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And
Yeah.
that is a ball to watch. Let me tell you,
It is something.
it's a cornball. That's for sure.
That's indeed.
But I don't hate it. There are parts of it I think are actually really
It's
cool.
enjoyable.
It's fun to see. We've always wanted to see the Justice League.
Of course, yeah, that was.
So any little scraps we can get, we'll take. But yeah, it's kind of stemming from that 14.
Yeah, kind of
those similar characters.
Right. So now we're gonna jump to the 70s with the fantastic Super Friends series.
Of course.
Which our dad grew up watching.
Yes.
That's kind of his version of those characters,
right.
I feel like, that he thinks
about. And it's a very people joke about Super Friends a lot.
Yeah.
Like they're always the subject of Robot Chicken shorts.
Yes, right, exactly.
And they're always the parodied version of the characters, but
because they're very silly.
They are very silly.
Yeah, they're very
but they're silly, I think, because they're so sincere.
Oh yeah, they are. Which I love.
Everything that they say, they fully believe.
Yep.
There is no corruption in these heroes.
No.
They're just paragons of justice and righteousness.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of heartwarming to watch.
Oh yeah,
nowadays.
I love watching it.
It's very like cool and encouraging because there's literally zero cynicism.
Yes.
Among those characters within the story. I mean, within the context of the way the series was created, sure, there is cynicism because it's a product that was churned out very quickly.
Right.
But yeah, the paragons of those characters that exist are very very cool.
I agree.
And very different from anything we see today.
Oh, very different. Very different. Very well worth watching. I highly recommend Super Friends, Challenge of the Super Friends as well. The several animated iterations, they're very popular. Hanna-Barbera put those out, and they lasted for several years, and that was what we had on screen. I mean, this was after the Adam West show ended.
Sure.
This was the version of these characters that you could watch if you were a fan.
Right.
And so after that faded away, we finally got our first ever big screen iteration of Superman, the first ever superhero, and the first ever superhero movie.
That's right.
Made for the theater, for the theatrical experience. I mean, this is cinema.
Shot and conceived for
right?
the big screen.
Yes. And it is Superman the movie, starring Christopher Reeve, directed by Richard Donner. And this film
1978.
78.
A year after Star Wars
finished. A year after Star Wars. They were shooting this, before Star Wars came out.
Sure.
They didn't know, this was all new technology, new everything, So
this I think really ushered in the 80s movie boom of all of those classic films that we got.
Yeah.
People attribute Star Wars a lot of the credit, but Superman showed us that there's so much you can do with just the idea of having your movie focused on just one character. And one kind of central superhero plot. That I think kind of became a formula later on. But here it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
It's truly an epic. It's an epic saga.
Absolutely, yes.
This film tells the story of Clark's entire life.
It does. It's a real epic. It's a real Americana feel to it. It's got that perfect balance of humor and heart. It's kind of making fun of Superman a little bit, but it's not like you're saying, it's not cynical. It's not It's just, just doing Superman right. It's just like staying true to the core of the character. This guy who, he'll save cats out of trees. I mean, he'll do whatever, he'll stop missiles, but he'll also help people on the street. So it's great.
And the 70s were a very interesting time for comics because things started to turn a lot for cynicism. Things got a lot more violent. Things got a lot more gritty. The rise of Punisher, the 80s was really when that started to boom. But
the 70s, like we were saying earlier, it's the Vietnam era, it's Watergate, it's all these things that were happening in the culture that were really turning things to a much darker kind of era.
And political cartoons had a big boom in the 70s as well.
Right.
So introducing Lex Luthor as a big character. As kind of whereas before we were talking about Superman as the embodiment of the U.S. government. Now it's kind of the reverse. In Superman the movie, Superman embodies the people. And Lex Luthor is the one embodying the corporations and the overreach of higher ups. So it's kind of that role switch with the culture that feels appropriate.
Exactly. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's come up many times on the podcast, and I've talked about it a lot, but it remains one of my favorites. It did big at the box office. I mean, this was a huge hit. And it deserved to be a hit because it was so well made. The people behind it. Richard Donner's whole thing was verisimilitude. That's what he had over his office wall, which is, doing things, believing it's true. You'll believe
a man can fly.
Exactly.
That's the mantra of the film.
We know this is a comic book. We know this is a cartoon. It's silly, but we're going to do it as if this was a real guy in our real world. That's why Metropolis is New York City. That's why, everything kind of has this real world aesthetic to it.
And as opposite as they seem, there's a lot of influence on Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight series.
A lot. Nolan is a huge fan of this film.
Because Nolan wanted to do for Batman what Christopher Reeve Superman did for Superman. In the sense that he wanted to make it real. Make it feel real.
That's right.
And as many problems as I have with Nolan's Batman adaptations, I think that setting it in a realistic setting in the same way Superman set his movie in New York City, I think kind of worked.
I agree completely. I think it was a lot of fun. Great movie. 4 sequels throughout the 80s. I mean, that's what we got. And, diminishing returns.
Amazing that the second one didn't come out until 2006.
Exactly. Richard Donner cut. Check it out. So throughout the 80s, and I've got to talk about Superman because I just saw this documentary. Phenomenal documentary.
The Christopher Reeve story.
It is so well worth watching. Focused in on this actor who, brought this character to life and went through many struggles of his own, of course, later in life and terrible things that happened to him and his family and everything. It's just really well made. So I highly recommend it if you want to know more about him, what was going on in his personal life while he was making these Superman movies. A lot of things I had no clue about. And so, it's definitely worth a watch. It's in theaters for 2 nights only. So check it out if your local theater is playing it. I highly recommend it.
Christopher Reeve, he's always the actor I think everyone points to for what should Superman be like?
Still, yeah.
Who embodies that likable, personable aspect of Superman?
And his performance is so good because, you know, we were talking earlier about the Clark Kent dynamic and how he very much plays up the bumbling Clark, you know, where he's trying to make people think there's no way this guy could be Superman because he's so kind of just, you know, unaware of his surroundings and kind of just, you know, doesn't know what's going on, and kind of nervous and kind of, you know, these kind of things.
And I think the reason it works so well in this movie is because of Lois.
Yes.
It's all in service of Lois.
Margot Kidder does a great job, for sure.
Margot Kidder as Lois. It's so terrific.
Yeah.
And making that relationship really work is, I think, is what made their dynamic and their relationship a key part of what makes Superman Superman.
Yeah. She's very dismissive of Clark, loves Superman. You know, they explore that much further in the second film, which is, you know, a great sequel. But it's great. It's a great
contribution I attribute really mostly to Christopher Reeve's Superman movie. Because in previous iterations, I mean, Lois existed, and she was, you know, kind of the reporter who always was working with Clark and didn't know he was Superman, but
getting rescued a lot.
Getting rescued, sure. But this is what I think really honed in on their relationship and their dynamic,
I agree.
which led to stuff later in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. So again, throughout the 80s, we get more Superman movies. Again, he kind of falls off in popularity. The dark heroes get very popular. Tim Burton's Batman comes out, changes the game, another big blockbuster film.
Suddenly, comic books are very violent.
Violent comic books.
We get the Dark Knight Rises series.
Dark Knight Returns.
Returns, I'm sorry.
Exactly. And so...
Not the Bane one.
Right. So we go through the 80s, and again, Superman kind of becomes very unpopular. Tim Burton, though, he's like, hey, I think I've got an idea. Superman Lives. I'm going to cast Nicolas Cage.
Which, by the way...
And I would have loved to have seen
people joke about Nicolas Cage's Superman. If you've seen It Could Happen to You, he is basically Clark Kent in that movie.
Exactly.
And I think he could have done an excellent job as Superman.
I think he could have as well. But alas, it did not happen.
But no, it never happened.
What did happen was Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman.
That's right. This is a television series.
That's right. Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher stars the title characters.
Now, I'm dying to see the show. I've actually never gotten a chance to watch it.
You haven't even watched the pilot yet?
No. Because I know as soon as I started, I'm going to want to finish the whole thing.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I've watched several episodes now. I'm deep into season 1. It's a lot of fun. But it's a series that ran for several years. Very popular series, you know, on television. And they did a great job, you know, with those characters and their relationship and how they developed that relationship over time.
Sure.
Really good. A lot of Clark, as the title suggests, it's a lot of Lois and Clark. There's not a lot of Superman in it.
Right.
Which is interesting and different. And so...
and we'll see that influence bleed into later projects as well.
Absolutely. So that series ran for several years in the early to late 90s. Then, of course, we got the new animated version.
Yeah, in the 90s, I mean, we had the boom of so many things in the animated realm.
Yeah.
Batman the Animated Series was huge. We had Spielberg's joining with
Warner Brothers for Animaniacs.
It was a huge, like, so many people got to do so many amazing projects during that time.
Yep.
And in the comic realm, we had obviously the death of Superman take place. This was a huge...
Oh, yeah.
It was Superman's turn into the darker, more gritty, violent...
Yeah. Well, it was that whole idea of, like, people don't care about Superman anymore. Well, let's kill him. Let's make people care.
Right.
And it was a big event. Everyone bought this comic.
Sure.
I mean, you know, people who didn't buy comics
we've got a copy over here.
I've got several in that other stack over there of different... there's Death of Clark Kent.
That's a separate
thing. But under all those, I think there might be... Or on the other stack. Go to the other stack. You have all... There's all the...
Superboy. This is Reign of the Superman was another series that they did afterwards.
All that was hugely popular. And... you know, show that one right there. That lenticular cover is fun. Back for Good. He's you know, the death and return of Superman is a hugely popular.
The era of the super mullet.
Absolutely, the '90s mullet you can never forget. The big hair of the '80s and '90s influenced even comic book characters. So,
right.
So the '90s was an interesting time for Superman, but late '90s, '96, we finally got Superman the Animated Series.
That's right.
Which is, to this day, one of my favorite iterations of the character. Tim Daly
in the
role.
Yeah. This is another one that I think draws a lot from the Max Fleischer cartoon.
It does.
The same way Batman the Animated Series did.
Yep.
But there's a lot more Reeve influence.
Sure.
A lot more Superman than the influence here.
I can see that.
But there's also a really fun mixture of 60s zany Superman adventure.
Oh, sure.
Which is really cool.
And I love that they grounded his power level again, like the Fleischer series did.
Right.
Didn't make him this all-powerful character that he can destroy anyone, defeat anyone. He's got vulnerabilities. It's a challenge for him to fight some of these villains that he faces up against.
Let's just talk real quick for a minute about Superman's power level and the things that have been done to retroactively alter that, and where you think the balance kind of lies for that. Because for a long time, Superman wasn't an all-powerful god being who could destroy planets.
No.
He was a man who was faster than a bullet.
Right.
He was stronger than a train.
Right.
And he could jump over a building.
Right.
And those were his powers.
Yeah.
And like we were saying in the 60s when things got a little crazy, it was like every week, every month, Superman had a new power.
Right.
He can reconstruct buildings by looking at them.
Right.
He can, all these kind of crazy abilities that have kind of fallen out of the character's mythos.
Yes.
But a lot that have stuck around.
Sure.
He's got heat vision. He's got X-ray vision. Super breath.
Yep.
Sometimes called freeze breath.
Right.
All kinds of abilities. Micro vision. All kinds of vision.
Any vision, basically.
Any kind of vision.
Night vision, infrared vision.
Yeah. And some of them I think make sense, and some of them I think are a little silly. But
sure.
It's interesting to see what versions of the characters hold on to what powers. And the level of power.
Right.
And the things that have been done to counteract those powers.
Sure. Yeah, kryptonite, all the different types of kryptonite,
Of course. There's a rainbow of kryptonite out there.
There is, absolutely. There might even be a rainbow kryptonite out there.
Sure, I'm sure there's a comic of rainbow kryptonite. That probably exists.
They do a lot of interesting things with the comics. But the 90s series, the animated series, I think is his perfect power level.
Certainly.
It's really good. And, Tim Daly gave him a little bit of an edge.
Sure.
The Superman here, he's not just kind of your big blue Boy Scout necessarily all the way through.
He gets angry.
He gets mad. He does.
And the finale of the series is so dark. It is the most intense. Somber ending to a series.
Well, the ending of season 2 is great. Apocalypse Now.
Right.
We lose a major character there.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't see coming. And then the finale of the series, with him being brainwashed by Darkseid.
Right. It ends with Superman having lost the trust of the people of the world.
Right.
It's really kind of heartbreaking.
It really is. It's a bold ending.
It's a very bold ending.
But then we move straight into the Justice League from that. The Justice League animated series, which brings together him with Batman and Wonder Woman and all these characters. And that's another one of my favorite series of all time. Watched it so many times.
There's a lot of really intricate long form storytelling with those series.
Right. George Newbern taking over the voice role here did a great job. It's kind of seamless from him to Tim Daly to him.
Right.
And did a great job. He still had the edge to him. They had to kind of lower his power level a little because if Superman's there, he can kind of defeat the bad guy by himself.
I mean, there's a running joke in Justice League season 1. It's that Superman is the wimpiest character in the Justice League.
A lot
because the idea is if a villain can destroy Superman, then they're really a threat. Right, we really need the Justice League.
Yes, exactly.
But the inadvertent result of that is that Superman looks weak compared to the rest of the league.
Season 2, they got a lot better with it. Even throughout season 1, I think they kind of fixed it.
And of course, you have the fantastic Superman punching Darkseid scene.
Just so many.
He has the world made of cardboard speech.
Yes, it's great.
So yeah.
So he did a great job with that. He brought some wisdom to the role that I thought maybe wasn't there before because he is playing a slightly older Superman. So that Justice League series is fantastic. But another thing in the early 2000s we got a little show called Smallville.
That's right.
Smallville to this day is my favorite TV series of all time.
It's high praise. High praise.
It's 10 seasons.
Yeah.
Spent 10 years with these characters, and it's the best. It's the best. Tom Welling does such a great job as a young Clark. And this is, talking again about the secret identity thing. This is my take on the character. He's Clark.
I totally agree.
He's Clark. He's rocketed to Earth from Krypton when he's a baby.
Yep.
So he has no memory of his biological parents or his homeworld.
Mm-hmm.
He's raised by the Kents. Jonathan and Martha are his parents. His home is Smallville, Kansas.
Yeah.
And
he's in high school.
He's in high school.
He's just now discovering his powers.
Just now discovering.
I love the rule of the series: no flights, no tights.
Yes.
It's terrific.
Yes, exactly.
Because what Smallville does is say, this isn't a Superman movie. This isn't a Superman show, or even a Superman story.
No.
This is about Clark Kent. Tom Welling himself says all the time that he plays Clark Kent. He's never been Superman.
Right.
So yeah, it's terrific to see his growth and his arc throughout the series. Decisions that they made that were really risky at the time that I think paid off in a major way.
I agree.
Having him become best friends with Lex Luthor.
Yes.
The addition of having no Lois Lane for most of the early seasons of the show. And then having new characters like Chloe Sullivan, who had never existed before, and to me have become like essential parts of his character.
Sure.
Chloe Sullivan, I think, makes Superman Superman.
Right.
It's really amazing what the show manages to pull off in its later seasons.
I agree.
Yeah, it's terrific. Everyone, the entire cast is just terrific.
Yeah.
They're so strong. It's so well written.
It is.
It's a terrific testament to what you can do with 10 years of a series to really build this character, build these relationships. It's to me, it's the best Lois and Clark relationship.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I love their banter, their dynamics. They're making
Can't
fun.
stand each other at first.
I love it. I love it. It is so fun to see because we as the audience, of course, know where they'll end up.
Right.
Yeah, it's just amazing to see. The production value of the series, I think, holds up today in a lot of ways.
I mean, the special effects look great.
Yeah, it's terrific.
Theme song is iconic.
Of course.
Remy Zero.
Remy Zero, save me.
Check out Talkville. If you haven't been watching Talkville, if you're a Smallville fan,
yes,
Talkville is a great podcast with Michael Rosenbaum, who played Lex, and Tom Welling, who played Clark, talking about the show and kind of what they remember about it. They're rewatching it. Some episodes for the first time that they've never seen.
Of course,
so
yeah.
It's a fun podcast. So check that out. Smallville's great, iconic. And then, of course, we got Superman Returns just a few years after 2006.
Superman Returns is such an interesting Superman project.
Yeah, because it was bringing back Superman. You know, he hadn't been on the big screen since the 80s. He had only existed in television, thrived there, but they, of course, wanted to bring him back. And this was, of course, after X-Men and Spider-Man.
Right.
And this is a year after Batman Begins. They're like, we've got all these superheroes are becoming more popular.
It's very interesting. This is an era when superhero movies have become like the comics were when Reeves' movie came out.
Good point.
The movies are dark and gritty, and they're wearing leather.
Yeah,
everything's cool,
much more grounded,
and it's more matrixy.
Sure.
So yeah, making a Superman movie in this time is really interesting.
It was, and it was interesting the way they went because they really decided, we're not really going to go that way. We're not going to go dark. We're actually going to go back to Christopher Reeve.
Sure.
And we're basically making the third movie in that franchise.
Yeah. Visually and aesthetically, it is very, got that retrofuturism we were talking about with Max Fleischer's cartoons.
100%.
It's back to that kind of G. Willy kind of dialogue.
Yeah,
very
well,
snappy,
I mean, they even cast Brandon Routh because he looks so much like Christopher Reeve.
Right,
they wanted an actor that looked like Christopher Reeve.
Yeah. But what I think is really cool is that it takes that aesthetic and it takes the iconography of that character and uses grounded relationships and darker emotional themes through the story.
And it does have a darker color palette.
Sure.
And it does, do certain things that are different, but it still has that kind of soft, kind of, classic movie feel to it, which is interesting. It's an interesting combination of things, that it's trying to do. And I think it did it really well. I really liked this movie. I liked it when it came out. I still enjoy it quite a lot.
I like it a lot.
I think it's a lot of fun. There's some great set pieces. That airplane rescue is still one of the all-time great action sequences.
The eyeball shot and the gun.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of great moments. There's some things I don't, particularly care about in it. But overall, I think it's really well done. And it's a great ode to the character and to the kind of classic era.
Well, when Lex Luthor has a real estate plot, it's going to be great.
Exactly. 100%. So, 2006.
That's at the end of the 2000s. I mean, that I think was a huge kind of final era for all of the 90s stuff that was going on.
Right.
And I think
it was Superman Returns was trying to bring it back. They wanted to do a sequel, didn't quite make enough money to do a sequel. So they decided, you know what, we're just going to put Superman aside for now. And what they did was DC started making these direct-to-video films.
Okay.
The animated film. Some of them were based on the comics. The first one was Superman Doomsday, based on the Death of Superman comic we talked about.
Of course.
They did so many different, New Frontier and, Batman Gotham Knight, and some of them tied into the movies, some of them didn't.
Right.
Some of them were just standalone things. Some of them got sequels.
Yeah, we've got plenty of them behind us. We've got Superman Doomsday, All-Star Superman, the adaptation of the comic we've been talking about. Yep. Superman versus the Elite, the Death of Superman, and the DC Universe movies.
Yep, yep.
And of course the Tomorrowverse, which is just ended recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of those direct-to-video Superman movies really have an interesting to tell a self-contained story with the character.
Exactly. So that was a fun line. I mean, for comic book fans, I own all of them because I just really enjoy watching those, and especially when they're voiced by such great voice actors. You know, Tim Daly came back for several of them, to do Superman again, and so those are tons of fun to watch.
Yeah, coming out of the 2000s, it's a big era for reboots in the era, especially talking about comics. Yeah. This is when, I mean, we're getting to the 2010s. This is when New 52 started.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we've already had Crisis on Infinite Earths, so we've already kind of soft rebooted.
Sure.
And now New 52 is doing a whole new thing, and that was my entry point into the Justice League comics and kind of into the comic book world was that big reboot. I started reading Nightwing comics, started reading the Justice League stuff, Batman, Court of Owls, the whole big saga.
So then what happens is, you know, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy ends, one of the most successful trilogies of all time. And while he's making that third movie, he comes up with this idea for how to reinvent Superman. Totally reboot, redesign, you know, start over basically with the character on the big screen. And he and his co-writer David Goyer wrote the screenplay for Man of Steel. And they brought on Zack Snyder to direct, hot off the success of both 300 and Watchmen, his adaptation of the Watchmen comic book.
Which, I mean, from a producer standpoint, it makes perfect sense to want Snyder to do this.
Absolutely.
Watchmen, I think, for as many, flaws as that movie has, nailed the iconography of its characters.
I was just about to say that word, iconography. Snyder gets it. He gets visual storytelling. He understands the iconography. He's a huge fan himself. And so he was the perfect guy to visualize this new world of DC on screen.
Yeah.
And so they make Man of Steel. It comes out. It's a big success. It's divisive, as most of Snyder's films are.
Sure.
I, for one, adore this film. Every time I watch it, I like it more. I think it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I just managed to rewatch the entire Snyder DC trilogy.
Okay, yeah.
Man of Steel, BVS, and Justice League. Yeah, Man of Steel really, there's so much Henry Cavill brings that's very nuanced to the character of Clark.
Yep, I agree.
That's really cool because, and I think in taking some inspiration from Smallville, this isn't really a Superman story.
No.
That's why it's called Man of Steel.
Right, exactly.
It's really a journey of self-discovery. He's not even really Clark Kent.
Yeah,
he's kind of just an ambiguous stranger.
He's a lost wanderer.
He's just
wandering the earth, trying to figure out who he is and what he's supposed to be doing.
Right.
Because he's grown up. You know, I love the nonlinear structure.
All the flashbacks.
The flashbacks to Smallville. Young Clark. That young actor does a great job.
Oh yeah, he does terrific. Yeah. My son was in the bus.
Yeah. It's great. And you know, Kevin Costner as Jonathan and Diane Lane as Martha, they do a great job kind of as these more modern interpretations of these characters. Right? They're not the kind of almost caricatures, you could say, of small towns farm folk.
Yeah.
You know, these are much more real people.
Right.
You know, they're real people that they have
and they're not 90
they're trying
old.
To protect. Exactly.
They're not. Superman wasn't raised by two great grandparents.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so aging them down to something that's appropriate, making it a father-son story.
Right.
And honestly, to go back to Smallville just for a moment, that is what the early seasons of Smallville just mastered effortlessly.
Sure.
Is the Jonathan and Clark relationship. It's really a father-son show.
It is.
The whole series is framed like a father-son story.
Yeah.
With Lois, with Lois and her, general dad, with Lex and Lionel, of course.
Yeah, sure.
And with, of course, Clark and Jonathan. It's really a father-son story through and through. And I think, that in Man of Steel, we see a lot of that. It's very much a father-son story.
Right.
From the opening shot of Jor-El on Krypton.
That's right.
To all of our flashbacks with Jonathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. Man of Steel does a lot that I think people don't really give it credit for. And I think they really focus in and are kind of blindsided by
destruction,
the destruction,
and the action,
the ultra violence, the dark somber tone.
Does it even have that? I don't even see that, honestly. When I watch the movie, it just feels like a movie. It feels like a movie about a character.
Sure.
It doesn't. Now, I get it. I guess if you're looking for that Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve, bright, colorful spandex thing,
right?
That's not what this is trying to do. And I get it. It's not for everyone. I understand, but you have to understand what the film is,
right?
What it's trying to accomplish, and I think it accomplishes it exceedingly well. Again, modernizing everything, grounding everything, making us care, making us lean in.
Right.
I love what they do with Lois.
Sure.
You know, all of it. I mean, it's just so unique. I think that's what caught people off guard is it's so different from everything that's come before of Superman on screen that we've seen. But it's still very true to the character. I mean, you look at the character's arc. I mean, it's very true. It takes him to some darker places, sure. It challenges our heroes,
right?
Which I think is something that especially modern films need to do. I mean, if you're not challenging your hero in an interesting way,
sure,
what's the point, really?
Right.
I mean, it's kind of, we've seen it all before. We've seen the hero save the day a million times.
Right.
You know, what happens when he can't save the day or he can't do it exactly right?
Sure.
When he's still learning to be a hero. You know, I mean, that's what this whole movie's about. So I think they nailed it. I thought it was fantastic. Of course, we got Batman v Superman, which got even more divisive because that one definitely goes darker, brings in Batman.
Right.
Kind of, bringing on those elements from the Dark Knight Returns comics and pitting these two heroes against each other, Lex Luthor's whole plot and all that. Again, I thought it was great because I understood what they're trying to do here.
Sure.
You know,
it's a very deconstructive story.
Exactly.
Deconstructing iconography, deconstructing what the symbolism of these characters represents. What is heroism? What is what are the consequences of characters like this existing in the real world?
Exactly. And they do a great job with it. And I think that movie, really.
I mean, it is honestly rewatching it. These movies are quite depressing. They really are.
They're intense.
Watching through Man of Steel and BVS and Justice League like consecutively.
Sure.
I mean, lines like every act is a political act, and but there's no one stays good Superman. No one stays good in this world. It is because so much of it rings true, I think, in real life and in the world of the film.
That's the thing, is it's reflecting reality.
Sure.
You know, these films, they aren't trying to show us an idealized version of the characters in an idealized world.
Sure.
Like the comics do. This is showing us our world. Right. What if these characters existed in our world?
And there's
how would the reaction be?
There's a really interesting watching the trilogy together.
Yeah.
Man of Steel is very much about the iconography of Superman, matching his hopefulness and the symbolism of what Superman represents to so many people.
Right.
And then BVS is what's really challenging that. Batman is the real force that's driving against Superman as the symbol.
Sure.
While ironically using Batman as a symbol. There's a lot of interesting interplay between there.
Yeah.
And then Justice League is the answer to the clash.
Yes, exactly.
Justice League is saying we do have heroes.
Yes.
And heroes should exist.
Yes.
They should be symbols. They are larger than life. They're more than human. They really are.
Yeah.
But we use them and we look to them to solve problems and to see what we can do and what we should do.
Right.
So
they're just people. You know, they're flawed people. Yeah. Flawed people. You know,
so it's a really cool 3-act structure of those 3 films together with an inciting question, a statement, a question of the statement, and a rebuttal of those 3 films that I think is really cool.
It is. It's the best, in my opinion, we've ever gotten on screen as far as the DC universe goes. Just fantastic. So now we're in the modern era. Now we're all caught up. And what we have next is
sure. Yeah. I mean, well, let's just real quick not skip over probably my favorite Superman project in many years.
Oh.
Okay. It's My Adventures with Superman.
Oh, of course. Yes.
It's
so new. I forgot.
This is such a lovely series.
It is fun. It's
a lot of fun.
We've
just finished the 2nd season.
That's right. Yes.
And it introduced Supergirl and Brainiac, and it was just such a fun ride. But this show is basically perfect.
Yeah, it really is.
It has so focused in on Lois and Clark's relationship and the cuteness and the kind of big wide-eyed anime influence of that series.
And I love it's called My Adventures with Superman. It's Lois, really.
Right.
I mean, it's her show, kind of.
Sure.
I mean, it's all her and Clark.
She has a major arc.
She has a major arc. She plays a vital role in pretty much every episode.
Sure. There are episodes with only Lois.
Exactly.
There's a Into the Lois multiverse episode.
That's true.
Where we see the multiverse of Loises.
That's right. The League of Loises. Yeah.
It's very cool.
It is cool. It is cool. And they do a great job with Jimmy, and he's got a fun role. And yeah, they're kind of just.
And it's very modern. It's modern. It's modern without talking down to its audience.
Oh yeah.
It feels very natural. It is a natural, modern version of this character.
Right.
That is challenging in some ways.
It's different. It's very different. Yeah.
But they feel like such real people.
Yeah.
They speak the way real people talk.
The relationships are great.
It's so fantastic. It's adorable.
Yeah.
And it's just lovable. Yeah. They're just lovable people you want to hang out with.
It's funny. It can get intense though. It has drama, it has stakes. I mean, there's real stakes.
Major stakes.
Another one where Superman has a good power level, I feel like.
Sure.
What they do with Krypton, the Kryptonian technology is really interesting and different.
Yeah.
It very much feels fresh, feels new.
Certainly.
It got me excited, honestly. It's one of the projects that's got me most excited recently about the future of the character, which is why James Gunn's Superman.
That's right.
Next on the list, next summer.
It's amazing how soon we'll be able to see this movie.
I know. It's going to be here before.
Because for so long it has felt like a dream.
Yeah, it's true.
And now, I mean, I can't wait to see the first trailer. I'm stoked to see what they will decide. What they will decide will be. This is what we're going to show you to get you to watch this.
Right.
It's very exciting. I'm on pins and needles waiting.
Yeah, just what we've heard about the Authority and what he's building out with his DC universe, and we've obviously got Creature Commandos coming up, and how that's going to kind of set the stage a little bit.
Just to I think bring this all home, James Gunn talking about making this movie, making what is now just titled Superman. It was Superman Legacy for a long time.
Yes.
Now it's just Superman. Making Superman is a story he tells with his dad.
Yeah, it's all about his dad.
Yeah,
it comes out on his dad's birthday. His dad passed away a couple years ago, and it seems that's why I have such hope, because it seems so personal.
Yeah,
he was just going to write it and let someone else direct. As he finished the script, he thought, I've got to be the one to make this. Yeah. And that gives me a lot of hope.
For sure.
So I'm really excited. And he's a good friend of Snyder's. Their first movie.
He's also good friends with Michael Rosenbaum.
That's right.
The best Lex we've ever had.
And he's got Nicholas Hoult playing Lex. And he's got, Rachel Brosnahan as Lois.
I love seeing Nicholas Hoult on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast.
Yeah.
That was really
getting
fun.
some Lex tips.
Yeah.
That was fun. So that's it. Well, that's it for the whole timeline of Superman in comics, movies, and TV. So now we're going to rank our top 10 Superman portrayals right now. Here we go. All right, folks, this is our top 5 Superman actors. Okay, so we're going to do a draft.
That's right.
Whatever you pick, I can't pick. Whatever I pick, you can't pick.
And we're talking about everywhere, folks. We're talking about live action,
TV,
animation,
film,
series, everything. Movies.
Yep.
This is it.
So, did you go first last time, or did I?
Well, I'll let you go first this time. You're the super fan here.
I am a super fan. I've got to start things off with Christopher Reeve.
Of course.
Christopher Reeve, again.
Yeah. 4
films. Sure, the movies might not be up to par. He was always great in all of them.
Of course.
He embodied the character he still embodies the character, really. I mean, when people think about the character, they think about him.
Yeah. Certainly.
Again, the Superman documentary just solidified my adoration for him and his portrayal of the character. It's perfect. He nails Superman. He nails Clark. There's that great scene. I always think about that scene where Superman is just taking Lois on the flight.
Yeah.
And he says goodbye, flies off,
and then
Superman walks in the door.
Here comes Clark,
and it's so different. And he has this moment where he wants to tell her.
Sure.
He takes the glasses off. He stands up straight. He lowers his voice. Lois, there's something I have to. And then he puts it on. Well, I'm just going to show you the time of your life, darn it. And he puts the Clark persona back on. It's such a good performance.
Yeah, I totally
agree. The duality. But he gets it. There's consistency. It totally works.
Yeah.
The figure of hope and inspiration that he embodied is
definitely
really incredible.
Absolutely.
So he's my number one. What do you have at your number one?
That's a terrific pick. Reeves is an all-timer.
I think I'm gonna guess.
You know it. My number one pick is Tom Welling.
Tom Welling
as Clark Kent in Smallville.
He's great.
Tom, he's such a great actor.
Yeah.
And I think it's because he was so young when he was playing Clark.
Yes.
It was all new to him at the time.
Right, yeah.
And you really feel that Clark is learning alongside Tom Welling, the actor.
Yeah, that naivete.
Yeah, and it's just so relatable. I mean, to us, I think just our upbringing, we were both raised in kind of rural areas.
Sure.
So just kind of understanding Clark and his relationships with people and his keeping his secret and his learning and developing and growing as a person.
Yep.
So many of those episodes are they just ring so true to me and my own experiences in high school and now being out of high school.
Yeah.
It's just terrific. I saw that show at the perfect time.
Yeah.
I was able to grow up with it. You saw it while it was still airing on television and showed it to me. And it's just so when I think of Clark, I think of Tom Welling from Smallville.
It's a great pick. He's a great actor. Did a fantastic job in the role. I'm going to shift over to Tim Daly. He's going to be my next pick.
Great pick.
From the animated series.
Yeah.
And, it's too bad he couldn't do the Justice League show. George Newbern did a fantastic job, carrying the mantle.
Yeah.
But since he's done several animated films, I just watched Superman, Batman, Public Enemies last night.
Okay.
Which is fantastic. He does such a great job playing off of Kevin Conroy, and their whole back and forth is great. Again, he gave the character an edge that wasn't really there before. Again, he was the big blue Boy Scout, but he could get mad. He had a temper. He could
there's an episode of Justice League where I want to say Superman lies about something or he does something and someone, I think maybe Flash or someone says, "I thought you were the big blue Boy Scout," and he says, "I never even made it past Cub Scout."
Right, exactly.
It's like, oh, okay, this version of Superman he is a more street smart.
Right, exactly.
Which is cool.
Exactly. Yeah, it is cool. It's a great iteration of the character. So many great adventures.
Yeah.
And again, the relationship with Lois and what Dana Donani did with her role on that is great as well. Clancy Brown as Lex, and that whole interplay.
Terrific.
Just some great stories.
Definitely.
Told with that iteration of the character. So when I read a comic, I typically hear his voice.
Yeah. That's a big factor.
Yeah.
Into what makes a great Superman actor is because to me it's like when I'm reading a Spider-Man comic, it's a lot of it is Yuri Lowenthal's voice in my head from the Spider-Man video game.
Sure.
He embodies so much of that character, and of course, Spectacular Spider-Man is Josh Keaton. He just does fantastic. So, but that's definitely a big factor into what makes a great performance. Is
absolutely
when you think of that character, you think of that version of that character, that actor.
Right. All right. What do you have at your number 2?
My number 2. This is a tough pick. You took Tim Daly, and that's a big one. Taking some big swings here. I know what you'll probably pick number 3 for. I'm gonna leave that one, and I'm gonna go because I think it's more appropriate that you take that one. I'm going to take one we actually haven't mentioned at all. One that as long as we've talked about the history of Superman, one that we've completely missed because it's new. It's Tyler Hoechlin from Superman and Lois.
Oh wow. Okay.
Now I've seen most of the show.
Okay.
And he's doing a very different because it's a different age for the character.
Right.
He's a father and he's a husband, and it's really focusing on his raising his kids.
That's a very unique take because we've never really seen that.
Yeah, it's totally
in any
different.
of the series or movies.
Right.
So that is
and
interesting.
There's a terrific flashback episode to how he met Lois and their whole relationship.
Yes.
You get the iconic him holding the green car and the old suit.
Yeah.
Thanks, my mom made it for me.
Right.
He just has a great balance of the embarrassing dad because he's very sincere and Jew Willikers.
Right.
And he still has that Superman-ism to him.
Sure.
And also he has some great dramatic moments where he's being very serious and very, he's really counseling his kids.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, we were talking earlier about the Tim Daly wisdom that he kind of brought to that character.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. He's an older, wiser Clark Kent.
Right.
This is after having lost Ma and Pa Kent and Jor-El even in the fortress. And yeah, he's just kind of passing on his wisdom to his kids, and his relationship with Lois develops in really interesting ways.
Right.
So yeah, it's a new series, Superman and Lois.
Four seasons.
Four seasons.
Just ended?
Yeah, just ended.
I gotta catch up with it.
Definitely check it out because it's well worth watching.
Yeah,
as far as the like CW era series, this is one that is very separate. Yeah. It's very distinct from those. The quality is very different. Right. Has a very different tone. Mm-hmm. It's well worth watching.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to finish that one because I started it and I liked it. I just never got around to finishing it. All right, number 3, Henry Cavill.
Of course.
Henry Cavill.
You got to take it.
I think he's fantastic. Again, like you were saying, the nuance, the subtlety, the grounded performance.
Yeah.
That just fits that aesthetic of how do you reinterpret this character in a modern context in the real world. So compelling, so interesting.
Yeah.
And he just does a great job playing all the aspects of the character that are so interesting.
Sure.
And challenging our hero in a big way.
Yeah.
Which is difficult to play while still maintaining that kind of groundedness in his, upbringing, his morality, his hope.
Definitely.
He kind of grows in, doesn't know if he can trust humanity, doesn't know if he can trust Zod, like all of that stuff, that all the struggles he's going through, this kind of lost, lonely figure.
Yeah, definitely.
And, what he goes through and what he goes through with Lois, obviously, in the other 2 films and everything. I just think that's
brilliant. That's great. That's a great pick.
Yeah. What do you have at number 3?
Brandon Routh is my number 3. Yeah. Superman Returns.
Wow, okay.
I really like Superman Returns.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite Superman movies. It's really, I think it's on par with Man of Steel with me.
Okay.
I think it's really terrific. Again, it's that pulpy superhero fun that I love. That still has that kind of more dark, somber tone.
It does.
Which is really an interesting balance.
Yeah.
And what Brandon brings to the role is really cool. It's like because he has that kind of Reeves isms, but he's also a lot more thoughtful. I think a lot more pondering of the world, because at this point it's like, does the world need Superman? He's been gone for so long. So he's kind of grappling with the fact that the world kind of goes on even if Superman isn't here. So what does that mean? What is his responsibility now?
Sure.
So it's a really, I think, nuanced and underrated performance.
It is. Yeah, it doesn't have the same warmth as Christopher Reeve.
Sure.
Purposefully.
Yeah.
Because he's been away for a while in the coldness of space. He's going to become cold himself. And so
that alternate opening to the alternate film is very good.
To me, it's the opening.
Yeah.
It should be the opening. But great pick. All right, we're on to my number 4. I've only got 2 picks left. And man, this is a toughie. I think I'm gonna go with
it's a tough pick.
There's so many good ones. There's 2 I'm really going back and forth between. I don't know where I want to place them. I think what I'm gonna do next is Jerry O'Connell.
Okay.
Jerry O'Connell played Superman in the DC animated movie universe. So from Justice League War.
Yes.
The Death of Superman.
The Death of Superman movie.
Reign of the Superman, all the way through.
Which, by the way,
Justice League Dark Apocalypse.
The Death of Superman movie is really good. It's terrific.
The Death of Superman, in my opinion, is easily a top 5 Superman film.
Wow. That's high praise.
I think it is phenomenal. It is so well done. It does everything right. It brings us into Superman's life with Lois in a really compelling way.
And in an interesting way, because the Justice League exists in this universe, and I love that early scene with Clark is at the table with the Justice League, and he's like, I think I might.
Yeah, tell Lois.
I think I might tell Lois that
who I am. Yeah.
And he's really nervous about it.
And everyone's like,
and Flash is like, I told Iris like years ago.
Right.
Like that's not the kind of thing you just like don't talk about.
Yeah. It is great, and their relationship is so good, and the way they deal with Doomsday is great. Because he's unstoppable. The Justice League can't stop him. Only Superman can stop him. and just what everything he's going through in that film. He has so much to play. He has the fun kind of stuff
right
early in the movie when he's kind of fighting Intergang and all that. Then he has the serious kind of romantic stuff with Lois, and then the action stuff. It's just a really great performance, and his real life wife Rebecca Romijn is playing Lois.
Right.
So that helps make that work even more.
Sure. They've got the iconic line. They've got the "You've got me, who's got you?"
But they flip it.
They flip it.
Perfect.
Yeah. And it's appropriate. In the moment,
yeah,
it really works.
Totally works. So he's a great actor. I just like him as an actor anyway. I think he's underrated.
Sure.
As Superman, he really nailed it. And it's cool because he played Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, in Justice League Unlimited, off of George Newbern, and they have that great episode Clash where they fight.
Of course.
And so it was cool to see him later get to become Superman. And what he brought to that role was different, and kind of this earnestness, this youthful quality.
It's a great pick.
Really good. He played him through. I think the only one he didn't play him in was Justice League War, that first one. Alan Tudyk played Superman, but he played him in all the other films, and just there was a great sense of continuity there. And that Death of Superman, was the button on it.
Yeah, definitely.
It was perfect.
It's a very good pick. Very good pick.
That's my number 4. What do you have at your
just real quick, I want to run through a couple honorable mentions.
Okay, go ahead.
Darren Criss in the Tomorrowverse.
He did a really good job.
He is probably our newest Superman besides Cornswag.
Yeah.
I think he's the last, well, maybe the My Adventures.
Yeah, Jack Quaid.
Yeah, Jack Quaid. Who's another terrific Jack Quaid, did an amazing job.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Superman Man of Tomorrow movie is phenomenal.
Does a great
job.
He
does an awesome job as
Superman. Very young Superman.
Yeah, Darren Criss brings a lot of energy to the role.
Yeah.
And then these last two, I'm really on the fence about. I think I'm going to. Okay. As my last honorable mention, I'm going to mention Yuri Lowenthal.
Oh, he didn't make the top 5?
Because he didn't quite make it.
Wow. I thought for sure he was going to be your next
I know. I really like Yuri Lowenthal as an actor.
Here's what I like about him. I'm rewatching Legion right now. Legion of Superheroes. And he, the first season, he's very young Clark.
Yeah.
Very naive. Right. Doesn't know what's going on. He does a great job with that. Season 2, though, he's much older and wiser.
Yeah.
And he gets to bring something totally new to it.
Definitely.
Lowers his register. Like, he does some really interesting things.
Yeah.
In that series. So I'm a huge fan.
It's a terrific one. It's right on the cusp. It's between these two. And the other one I was going to mention, my number 10 or number 5, excuse me, is Nolan North in Young Justice. Okay.
So wait. I'm sorry. Is this you're at number 4?
This is my number 5. Oh, I'm at 4?
Yeah, you're at 4.
Oh, okay. I thought that was my 5th.
No. You have
Tom Welling. Didn't you say your 5th?
No, I said my 4th.
Oh, dang.
So you've got 4 and 5 left. No, you've got Tom Welling, Tyler Hoechlin, Brandon Routh, and Nolan North.
Well, now I'm gonna say Yuri Lowenthal.
Yuri Lowenthal,
because I thought I was out of them.
Okay.
But yeah, let's do Yuri Lowenthal.
Okay, perfect. And Yuri Lowenthal at 4.
This way I can have both of them.
Great.
And have my cake and
eat it too.
Yuri Lowenthal. Let's just hope you don't take Nolan North. Yuri Lowenthal.
My number 5, Nolan.
Yuri Lowenthal and Legion of Superheroes. We just talked about him.
Yeah,
he's terrific. He's also a great Spider-Man. Right. He's one of the few actors to have played both characters.
It's probably the only one.
No, there's one more. It's Yuri Lowenthal, and I'm trying to remember who it is. But they just talked online. Somebody, because he had just played Superman.
Josh Keaton?
Might be Josh Keaton. I have to look it up. I can't remember.
I don't know. Interesting.
But there are two people. It's Yuri Lowenthal and one other person. I can't remember. He might be Josh Keaton. I can't remember. But yeah, Yuri Lowenthal and Legion of Superheroes does terrific. It's a younger Superman, like we talked about. So yeah, that's definitely, he makes the list.
Excellent choice. All right, on to my last pick. Man, this is tough. There's so many great actors who I want to talk about.
Yeah.
I like Dean Cain a lot from Lois and Clark. I really think he's a great Clark. I think Sam McLaughlin did a great job in New Frontier. Mark Harmon in Crisis. James Denton in All Star. But I'm gonna have to give it to George Reeves.
George Reeves, the
black and white, Adventures with Superman TV series. I mean, just he embodied the character for a generation, our grandparents' generation.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that was their Superman.
Yeah.
They watched every week. I mean, they couldn't wait to tune in and see what Superman was going to do next and what adventure he'd go on with Lois and Clark and Jimmy and Perry, and as I'm rewatching the show, I love it. I love every episode. It's just something fun. And they're doing some really interesting things, and he really, again, I think does a great job. Superman, the confidence he has That's probably the number one quality I would say he has, that he brings to it, is this confidence.
Yeah.
Everything he says, everything he does, every interaction with every character, doesn't care if it's a bad guy, if it's one of his friends.
Right.
He just exudes this confidence, which is exactly, I think, how Superman would be.
Totally.
He would be the most confident person because he's invulnerable.
Of course.
He's the most powerful person on the planet. Nothing would really faze him.
Definitely.
Nothing phases this guy. I mean, you watch him go up against whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because any villain he goes up against, he knows he can take him out. And it's really fun. It's a really fun show to watch. And I can, can't wait to watch, the rest of the series. All right, so that's my number 5, George Reeves, Adventures of Superman. Carson, give us your number 5.
It's a great pick. My number 5 is Nolan North from Young Justice.
Nolan North.
Now, the reason I picked Nolan North, because he's not in the show a lot as Superman.
Sure.
Superman shows up here and there. There's a terrific. He is Superboy. So he shows up as Superman a few times. There's a terrific scene with him and Batman in a diner where they have a conversation about what they're going to do about Superboy.
Right.
And Superboy is also voiced by Nolan North. He's a clone of Superman.
Yep.
So I consider them very similar characters. Sure. His role as Superboy is phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
I think he might be the greatest character in the entire series.
I agree.
Upon a recent rewatch.
100%.
A lot of nuance, a lot of questions about what does it mean to be Superman.
Yeah.
There's that great episode where they're caught in this training scenario, and Superboy talks about how everyone he knows and loved was dead, and he was happy because for the first time he knew what it felt like to be Superman.
Right.
And it's like, what do you do with that, emotionally? And Nolan North brings a lot of nuance to this character because he's playing him young because he's a clone, so he's really only like 6 years old in the series, but he's like like an 18-year-old. So it's a terrific performance.
I agree.
He brings even to his Superman role, he plays it very like, I'm Superman and I'm going to save the day.
It's interesting the way he plays Superman because he's very standoffish at first. Right. He doesn't like Superboy. He doesn't know what to do with this idea of the clone of himself.
Right.
Like, is he ready to be a dad? Then in season 2, they're brothers. That's how they look at each other. They're brothers. So it's a great kind of evolution of that character arc in the background, kind of the show.
Right.
But it's very effective.
In season 4, Superman has a kid.
Sure.
He has his own son, John.
Yeah.
So very cool. I think Nolan North does an awesome job. I think he's a terrific actor in general. I think he can do anything.
Yep.
And him doing Superman, he just knocks it out of the park.
I agree. Nailed it. All right. Well, that's it, folks. Those are our top 5 Superman actors. Now we want to know who your favorite Superman actors are. So leave a comment down below with your top 5 portrayals of the Man of Steel. Let us know your favorite shows, your favorite movies starring Superman. That's maybe a podcast in the future. Maybe when this new Superman movie comes out, we'll do a whole Superman ranking of every Superman movie ever made.
Right.
Or something like that. That could be fun. So yeah, let us know in the comments. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe. Carson and I are both on Letterboxd, so follow us there. I did a full review of the Superman documentary.
That's right.
On Letterboxd. I did a reaction to that as well, so you can check those out on the channel right now. Yesterday was also Batman Day. So let us know your favorite Batman stuff. These 2 characters. We got to maybe do a Superman Batman podcast.
That'd be fun.
Because these 2 characters are interlinked in the comics and in the shows.
Well, coming up, that's what's going to be on everyone's mind with the Batman 2 and Corn Sweat Superman coming out. When both of those movies have trailers, that's going to be on everyone's mind. So we might do that.
And James Gunn, of course, is doing a Batman Brave and the Bold film.
That's right.
So we'll get our own Batman in that universe as well. So
speaking of, we should probably do a Penguin thing.
We should do a Penguin thing.
Maybe when the series is fully released, we should do a whole retrospective.
Yes. So
that first episode was great.
It was. And they nailed it. So lots of fun stuff in the world of DC. We're huge DC fanatics, as you can tell by all these comic books and magazines we've got up here, all the movies. So let us know what you think about this episode, what you think about this character who's been around for going on 90 years. I mean, coming up to be 100 years before we know it. So thank you so much again for joining us. Make sure you hit that like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos, and we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.